They went up another level. We didn't match them. I'm looking forward to people doubting us again. Those are the words of Connor McDavid after the Game 2 loss. See the Oilers fall behind 2-0 to the Panthers. The series now shifted to Edmonton. That's where we now bring in Ryan Rishaug and Chris Johnston. Guys, loads of news to talk about today. The latest on Evander Kane, his injury and his availability. Darnell Nurse, of course, missing most of last game. How's he doing? Potentially Corey Perry coming in. We're going to get to all that in a minute, but we got to begin with Connor McDavid. Here's a guy, McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, RNH, top 4 leading scorers in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. Not a single goal between the 4 of them going into Thursday night's Game 3. Ryan, what are you seeing from Connor McDavid right now?
Yeah, it was interesting. He walked into the media availability today, this press conference. It's over in the community arena, Gino, so it's this huge open room. It felt like a massive stage, and really for the first time in this Cup final, CJ, it felt like a massive stage, literally, that he was sitting on, his voice kind of echoing through the room. I saw Connor McDavid laser focused. I mean, he was cordial, he engaged, he did his best to answer all the questions, but that looked to me like a Connor McDavid that is laser focused and knowing that they need to find some answers. I think we saw that after Game 2, a similar tone from him where he was already looking to the narrative heading into Game 3, which was, as you said, looking forward to being counted out or underestimated. And this team has been through a lot. Like this season, they were counted out early on and for good reason. And I think there's a built-in confidence from the extent to which they flipped that script. I think they're all benefiting from that confidence right now. And to me, Connor McDavid is a player that I think knows they have what it takes. But this 2 days between games is probably just killing him, CJ. And, Chris Knobloch was asked about McDavid's leadership. And he told a story that I had not heard before about McDavid and leadership from much earlier on in his career, CJ.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, they worked together a decade ago with the Erie Otters of the Ontario Hockey League. And one thing Chris Knobloch said is heading into Connor McDavid's 17-year-old season, he wasn't going to name him the captain. He said, I knew he was going to be our best player, but in a league where you have 19-year-olds, even some 20-year-olds, is a 17-year-old really your leader? And then they get to training camp, and he saw the way McDavid interacted with teammates, treated the staff, took leadership with the product that they were putting together on the ice, and he basically realized this guy is our leader.
That's our captain, yeah.
And here you are 10 years later. Of course, he's wearing the C in Edmonton as he has for a long time. And between what is probably the next biggest game of his life, at least until Game 4, he's leading on the ice. He was the best player, Knobloch said at practice here today. And probably having that relationship, that context, puts the coach at ease a little bit, just knowing what he's getting from his captain.
And, Gino, when he says he was the best player on the ice at practice, I completely agree. We watched that whole practice, and McDavid was all over it. There was one funny moment where they were doing line rushes, and McDavid blazed to the front of the net, and he tipped one in, and he beat Skinner. And he just looked at Skinner like this. And Skinner was like, no. He was indicating high stick, and Connor was like, no. So he goes hard on these practice days and certainly setting a tone today.
All right, guys, types of tough questions right now. Loads of news to get to. Let's talk about Evander Kane. Evander Kane, healthy, can contribute tremendously. We all understand that. But he himself, Kane said he's suffering through a sports hernia, and it seems like his productivity has diminished to the point where last game he played barely over 10 minutes, well below his usual amount of ice time. And even when he was not on the ice, you could just see the grimace on his face. Is Evander Kane still capable of contributing, or is it time to make a change?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one, Gino, because they need him. I mean, think about the way this Florida team plays, and Evander Kane is one of the players that can elevate in that way, but he is clearly diminished. So, CJ, we saw him on the ice this morning. He came out early, Gino, and he was just firing pucks from the slot. He was basically the first one on the ice, and you could tell he was kind of wincing in pain. He wasn't comfortable. Then he goes and has the rest of the team trickles onto the ice, and Kane goes over to the board and has a long, probably 4 or 5 minute long chat with Chris Knobloch, just the two of them chatting. And then as the rest of the team fired up practice and all the drills and line rushes, Kane left the ice. Now, what's notable to me in this is that Evander Kane was wearing a top 6 white jersey, a sweater. So the top 2 lines wear white and the bottom 2 wear blue. He was in white. But there were also 6 other forwards in white sweaters. And that included a new look second line, Leon Draisaitl with Ryan McLeod and Dylan Holloway. So the fact that there were 6 other guys in white and there was a new line that looks like it could make some sense, CJ, my instinct is we could see Evander Kane not being in for 3.
Yeah, and you get the feeling they're just getting to the point where, all kinds of players in this series, I'm sure, are playing banged up at something much less than 100%, but maybe he's so much below 100%, it just doesn't make sense. And the game obviously matters so much. The Oilers down 2-0 in the series. They need someone to come in and give some life, a fresh body. I mean, in this case, might be Corey Perry, who missed Game 2. Certainly, Chris Knobloch made it sound like Perry was likely to draw back in with the series coming back here to Rogers Place. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. Kane has been an important part of the team. But, you've been seeing it game after game after game, and it just does not appear to be getting better, even with the 2 off days here in the series.
All right, more news. Darnell Nurse, we know he got nailed by Evan Rodriguez midway through the first period of the last game. Only had 4 minutes and 20 seconds total of ice time, just 3 shifts after he got nailed. Is he going to be healthy enough? Because we saw what happens with Nurse out of the lineup. There's a lot of guys on the blue line playing way more minutes than they should be.
Well, Knobloch, Chris, and you can recap what he said. He actually gave a fair amount of information on Darnell Nurse, and it looks positive, I would say, for Game 3.
For sure. I mean, they said they haven't even contemplated him not playing, which is, if you decipher that, is he's playing unless something unusual pops up between now and game time. And he mentioned that even the fact he got those 2 shifts in the third period, Gino, that was a reflection of some of the treatment he was able to receive in game, and that with the further work that's happened during these 2 off days, heading into Game 3, that Knobloch basically said he had full comfort that it was sort of an isolated, contained situation, and they don't anticipate him being overly limited in that game. Again, with the usual caveat, everybody on the ice is probably not fully healthy. But I didn't come away from that in any way thinking he wouldn't dress and that he won't play meaningful minutes. Assuming we'll see what we get once the game starts.
My thought on Darnell Nurse, Gino, is that there are a few players on each team that have the ability to, in one way or another, significantly shift a game, significantly shift a series. And Darnell Nurse, for all the criticism that he takes, Darnell Nurse has that ability. We saw him do it in the Dallas series, came out with 12 hits, was super physical, played his best game of the playoffs, and he shifted the tone of that game in a lot of ways. They really need Darnell Nurse at his best, especially against this Florida team. It's clear he's going to be diminished to a degree and injured here. It's a big loss for the Oilers. Never mind if he wasn't able to play, and we think he will. But just the fact that this specific player and the physicality that he might be able to play with is diminished, that's a big hit. And then you couple that with Evander Kane physically not being able to engage. That is a big swing in Florida's direction in terms of the overall physicality, Gino.
And do you know what? One thing, I had a chat with Matthias Ekholm today, and he was mentioning, not necessarily specific to Nurse, but he said, with defensemen, you don't notice things. Like, games go by, everything's fine. It's like you start to notice their absence when they can't play. And as you say with Nurse, it's he can make that play that changes the game, but also someone else playing those minutes might not be as much as you can find a giveaway. We can go back through the numbers, but that's a tall ask of someone lower in the lineup to come in and try to fill in for him too.
Guys, I don't know about you, but one of the real shockers for me right now is what's going on with the Oilers power play. We were talking about going to the series, Florida Panthers better be disciplined, because if they give the Oilers the opportunity in the power play, they're going to get smoked. The Oilers, the #1 power play in all the Stanley Cup playoffs going into the Cup final, but they're 0 for 7 through the first 2 games. Do you have any explanation of what's happened? Is this all about Florida's penalty kill? And what, if anything, can the Oilers do to adjust?
Yeah, McDavid talked about the structure of the Florida penalty kill and how good a job they do getting their sticks in lanes. Like, no question, Florida's doing a fantastic job of this. CJ, in my experience with this Oiler power play, they'll have dry spells like this, but then they always seem to find a way to break through. They figure it out. Glenn Gulletson runs it. They've got a tremendous amount of experience all playing together. And you have to think, Gino, that they're going to find the answers. But the interesting thing from Connor McDavid today, he actually peeled back the layer a little bit. He talked specifically, Gino, about what the formula might be for them to find the answer. And CJ, you can run us through it. Were you as surprised as I was? There's a bit of detail in there.
Well, he said we call it road hockey, and we need to be elite at it because they almost need to let their instincts take over. He said
less structure.
Yeah, less structured. He said have a 5-on-5 mindset. And, it's interesting. Early in the series, Paul Maurice was talking about it from the reverse side of the coin. He said, look, we can see what the Oilers do. We can game plan. He said, but what makes us nervous is these players' instincts, that they can do things that, you don't necessarily drop on the board and he pointed to that goal McDavid had scored early in Game 6 against Dallas, where he drove it right through the crease. Everyone played it the way you'd want to play it, and the best player on the planet scored there. And so, it was an interesting look into the mindset, and I can almost never recall hearing players say that we need to be less structured.
Yeah, he got specific. Yeah.
No, but certainly I am not sitting here second guessing the Oilers' power play. This is a historically great power play.
Yeah.
But usually when things aren't working on the power play, you hear players say, "Oh, we got to find our structure. We have to make sure that we're finding these lanes." And really, he's just saying, "We're great. We have to find a way to be great."
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll add to that, Gino, is I think early in that game, they came out and had some okay looks on the power play, and they didn't get shots on net. So in the Dallas series, when their power play went a little bit dry, to me, the change I noticed immediately was that there was a lot less big, long passes from the corner all the way to the blue line, all the way across. They shrunk the ice down a little bit, and they started making some plays in and around the blue paint. They started getting into that gritty area a little bit. That's tough to do with an aggressive penalty kill, but don't be surprised if in Game 3, on their first power play opportunity, we don't see a shot right away, and we don't see some more bodies. A lot of times the Oilers, what they'll do, they'll flare off to the sides looking for those one-timers. It's a conscious effort for them not to do that. Instead, go towards the nets and try and create a little bit in there, and I think we'll see them try and do that.
One last quick question before I let you guys go. Do we have any update on Sasha Barkov? Of course, he left last game after taking that elbow to the chops from Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah. Video out of Florida today. He was skating. I think the update from Paul Maurice has been pretty consistent over the last couple of days, CJ. Like, he's continuing to progress. And everything that I'm hearing sounds like he's going to play.
Yeah, and we know he doesn't have a broken jaw, something like that, which is obviously the fear when you see him take the hit he took and he didn't play the last half of a period. The fact he's skating, I mean, what's it going to take to get him out of the lineup at this point with the Panthers 2 wins away from the Cup final? I think we're going to see him on the ice at puck
And
drop.
we haven't talked yet since the no suspensions, the no this and that. I don't know what you thought about it. I thought, Gino, that there was, I mean, you could argue that a rear naked choke on a player to the point where he has to tap.
No.
I mean, that's not within the bounds. That's something they could look at. Certainly the elbow was it feels to me, CJ, like there was a little bit of, okay, there's a bunch of shenanigans. Some of it probably canceled each other out. We're just going to go hands off by the league. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, it's sort of tit for tat in a sense. And look, it's maybe a different discussion if we, if the Panthers come out and say Barkov's done for the series. I think we're probably having a different discussion. Not to say the injury is the sole reason. There's a lot that goes into those decisions. I know that they didn't like the hit, but they just didn't think in this moment, Game 3 of the Cup final, it rose to something that would see, having Draisaitl taken out of that game.
I agree 100%. The Warren Fogle 5-minute major for the knee on knee. We saw a couple that could have gone against Florida in that game as well. I think it's all a wash. Let's move on. Let's get set for game number 3, which, by the way,
all's fair.
The first game. Oh no, there it is. There it is. Tap out, CJ. Tap out. CJ, Ryan, this has been a lot of fun, boys. Enjoy Thursday night's game. Appreciate it.